Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Kiesel. I'm the Executive Director at the ACLU of Oklahoma. We're here today at City Hall because the City of Oklahoma City, in an effort to target the most vulnerable among us, those that are struggling on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis with crushing poverty, in the process of targeting them for special prosecution and criminalization, they have jeopardized fundamental speech rights and due process rights that we all enjoy. And so today, ACLU of Oklahoma is proud to represent, along with two private counsel, a host of plaintiffs that range from joggers, marathon runners, cat owners, panhandlers, and just people that use medians as part of their daily lives. And look at the most recent ordinance, which criminalizes many activities, including important and guaranteed and protected speech activities on medians in the city of Oklahoma City. With me today, I have Brady Henderson, Legal Director of ACLU of Oklahoma, Joe Ty, private counsel, who also wears another hat as a First Amendment professor at the University of Oklahoma College of Law, Greg Beebens from Legal Aid Services, and now I'd like to turn it over to Brady Henderson to talk more about the actual meat of the lawsuit and introduce our plaintiffs, and we'll turn it then over to other counsel to visit, and we'll have some opportunity for plaintiffs to make statements and some Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks, everyone, for coming. First, let me give you some basics on the lawsuit. It's being filed today in the Western District Federal Court here in Oklahoma City. And that means it is a federal lawsuit. We will start at the district court. If it is appealed, if one party is unhappy, it would go to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, and then in theory to the U.S. Supreme Court. And that's a battle we're prepared for if we have to do that, though we do not anticipate that's going to have to happen. We believe we have a strong case. We have in fact filed today a 50-page complaint plus the exhibits. And I will say in my time as a lawyer, it's probably the longest one I've ever filed. Now, only a lawyer can be proud of the length of what he files. You know, we like to talk. We are not actually paid by the word, but it does seem like it sometimes. But there's another side to that, and it's that the story of this ordinance is complicated. It is challenging. It's difficult. But at its core, it is rotten. It is an ordinance that was done in mean-spirited ways and dishonest ways, and it is that taint that I think, amongst the other issues, will cause a court to strike it down. This ordinance makes it a crime for me to walk a dog in my own neighborhood if it's on a small grassy median. It makes it a crime for me to stand in a median and cheer on a runner during the Oklahoma City Marathon. It makes it a crime for one of our plaintiffs, Mark Falk, to go get his cat if he runs out the front door into a median in front of his house. This is something that criminalizes mundane and innocent behavior all over the city. It wasn't targeted to do that, but when the city became criticized for targeting the poor, they lumped in everybody too. And they said, now nobody gets to be on the median. Nobody gets to do this. That's why we filed this lawsuit today, to strike it down. And I want to briefly introduce some of our plaintiffs who are here today. There are 7 plaintiffs in the lawsuit. Not everyone is here. But let me start over here. This is Calvin McCraw. And Calvin is an ex-roughneck, I will call him, worked oil field for about 30 years, and was in the workforce when he was injured recently and began to have to panhandle. He now also vends or distributes for the Curbside Chronicle, as well as spending a lot of time applying for jobs and benefits and working alternatives. And Calvin will love everybody speak in a minute, but I'll just introduce everybody for now. And then we also have Neil Schindler, who is trying to think what should I call him? A runner.
Jogger.
A jogger, okay, not quite a runner.
Sorry, was that?
Oh.
It's a jogger.
Good Lord.
Jogger.
A jogger, right. And simply wants to be able to rest his legs on a median during the marathon. We have Andrew Griffin from Red Dirt Report, local media outlet, who wants, as many of you might at one point in time, to simply be able to stand on a median and take a picture if there's an emergency or an accident or a story that needs covered, and to be out of the way of emergency vehicles. We then have Mark Falk, who is many, many different things. We have referred to him as everything from an activist to a cat owner, all of which are accurate. Mark makes films, he does political activism, he has been a candidate for office himself, and has a variety of concerns about this ordinance. And I'm going to change my framework here. We have Tina as well, who is vice chair officially, I believe still, of the Libertarian Party of Oklahoma, a party that struggles to compete with the Republicans and Democrats who have many more resources and much more money. What they have is the ability to have grassroots people out on places like medians communicating their message, and that's something that this ordinance prevents. So now that we've introduced our plaintiffs, told you a little bit about the lawsuit, I want to turn it over to Joe Ty, our private counsel working with us today.
Thanks, Brady. Good morning. I am honored to represent a broad cross-section of the community whose speech and activities that are protected by the Constitution are now criminalized by the City of Oklahoma because they occur on the traditional public forums of medians. The fact that we have a broad cross-section of the community challenging this law demonstrates that it not only targets in a mean-spirited way the speech of the least among us, but that it does substantial collateral damage to the speech of all of us. Of course, this ordinance, a solution to get panhandlers out of sight and out of mind, doesn't really solve the root causes of panhandling, which are extreme poverty and chronic homelessness. Instead, what it does is that it converts a poverty crisis in our midst into a constitutional crisis. The city cannot simply cloak its targeted anti-panhandling law in the guise of a traffic safety measure. That's just a sham that's not worthy of elected government. Moreover, applying this targeted crackdown on speech in the public medians to virtually all speech in our community, from political activists like our Libertarian Party to joggers and dog walkers, just multiplies the constitutional violations rather than hiding them. At bottom, our city is better than this. A city that's compassionate and forward-looking is a city that spends its resources on services that help to lift the poor out of poverty, rather than criminalizing the speech and activities of the poor in order to lift its own image. I know the citizens of Oklahoma City are better than this. This law does not reflect the better angels of their nature. Instead, this law disrespects our constitutional rights, and we look forward to having our views expressed in court. Thank you.
Rick? At Legal Aid Services of Oklahoma, we're especially concerned about this lawsuit because it does appear to have been targeted at our most vulnerable citizens, those citizens who make up our client base. And we've already seen that this ordinance is affecting these vulnerable citizens' ability to generate income that goes to necessary housing, to medications, and to food. And moreover, our plaintiffs feel insulted by this ordinance. They feel insulted by their elected government who are targeting their rights and their ability to address the general public in a way. So we're excited to partner with the ACLU and with Joe Ty to challenge this ordinance and to protect the rights of our most vulnerable citizens.
Would you like to see
Yeah, sure. This looks like a lot, but I promise it's just a minute. I'd like to read it. Forgive me for reading it. The Oklahoma Libertarian Party was recognized as an official party on February 21st of this year. I personally managed a signature drive resulting in that recognition. While involved in this drive, I became increasingly aware and frankly alarmed at the lack of access our petitioners were experiencing to places where people actually were. By law, we were being forced to collect huge numbers of signatures to gain representation to our electoral system, and yet we were denied access for one reason or another to the very people who might sign. Private businesses and public spaces alike were hostile to our petitioners. Waving signs like this one and flags on sidewalks and medians in high traffic areas became instrumental in our eventual success. It's very likely that our party will have to repeat the petitioning process again in 4 years. That is frustrating enough, I assure you, without the added thought that we might have an even higher mountain to climb due to the mean-spirited and short-sighted nature and actions of a few local policymakers. I believe Ordinance 25-283 was enacted with the intention of targeting the free speech of panhandlers, and the free speech of political activists and every other citizen simply became collateral damage. The Libertarian Party has a saying, all rights of all people all the time. We like that because it's catchy and memorable. It's also a moral standard necessary for a moral government. Some rights for some people will end in tyranny for all. cruel and oppressive government is always instituted to control those people. When will we learn we are all those people to someone? Aside from the petition drive, I have participated in any number of sign-waving events utilizing medians around the city. They are an absolute mainstay of protests, issue awareness campaigns, and candidate promotions. Freedom is messy, and sometimes it's easy to forget that in our misguided attempts as a society to scrub our surroundings of things that make us uncomfortable. People are poor, veterans are homeless, our government drones hospitals in our name, and some of us believe the war on drugs are evil. If having to think about those things makes some uncomfortable, then so be it. It's a small price to pay. Ironically, we live in an age where technology allows individuals to connect with other individuals around the world with the stroke of a keyboard, and yet at the same time, we are being almost systematically cut off from those in our own neighborhoods with actions such as the one the city has taken by enacting this ordinance. This trend towards political and social isolation will have increasingly devastating consequences for those of us who wish to affect or inform the ideas and positions of others and who don't have access to large amounts of money. Ordinance 25-283 denies the public use of what is basically a modern-day extension of the public square. Of what value is free speech when there is no forum left in which to practice it? Thank you.
Mark. My name's Mark Walk. I'm a filmmaker and an activist. A lot of people know me in Oklahoma and Oklahoma City. I got involved in this because I champion the rights of the poor, and I champion the rights of people who are in prison. I'm finishing a documentary about the prison industrial complex. I'm getting ready to start another one about homelessness. And in this ordinance, homelessness and the criminalizing, homelessness have suddenly collided. So I do a film about prisons, I do a film about homeless, and now we are directly putting the poorest people in Oklahoma in jail. And this is a problem. I have a personal note on this in that I lost my best friend 2 months ago. I had already planned a documentary about homeless people in Oklahoma, and my best friend was homeless and we didn't know it. He collapsed in a field near where he was panhandling, was rescued by another homeless person, and died 2 months ago. My next step was to then go film in the median where he panhandled from as part of the film, which I now cannot do. We're collateral damage. As a filmmaker, I'm collateral damage on this, but let's be clear, this is the criminalization of poverty in Oklahoma. That's all this is. Oklahoma City is taking direct aim at people that we should be helping by spending money on mental health services and shelters, but instead we're putting them in jail and fining them for being poor. I mean, let's be very clear about that. This is all that this is. As I was leaving my meeting with the ACLU, as a joke, I sent a text back to Joseph. I drove home and my cat, Evo Chavez, was on the median of Chartel, where she is every day, at least once. And I messaged and said, is it legal for me to go rescue her from the median? And he said, no it isn't, and I want a picture of your cat. And it started as a joke, but it's not a joke. This is how restrictive this is. The only exemption they put in there is for emergencies. And the irony of that is that if someone trying to get money for food and for shelter is not an emergency, then I don't know what is. And this is simply wrong, it's mean-spirited, and we know that it's unconstitutional. So, that's it.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm Andrew Griffin with the Red Dirt Report, and as a journalist who's worked in Oklahoma City for nearly a decade, I've found myself on medians multiple times covering everything from breaking news, car crashes. Some of you may have even attended the press conference for CARE some months ago, where we were forced to go and do the press conference on the median on Lincoln Boulevard. So as a reporter, this is going to cause a real problem for me and my staff to cover breaking news if we're trying to stay out of the way of emergency responders covering a fire or something, or a car crash. I'm sure a lot of you here in the media have been there. And really, I'm here as part of the, free speech is a First Amendment issue, and also in solidarity with our friends at the Curbside Chronicle and all of you here who are just trying to do your job and not feeling like you're going to be breaking some law because of an ordinance passed by reactionary elements on the City Council.
Hi, I'm Neil Schindler. I run in the Memorial Marathon. And the marathon, everybody knows, is just, it's a beautiful event. It's tens of thousands of runners get together with tens of thousands of people that cheer us on to join together really in something that's so touching and so meaningful to everybody. I like to run sometimes in medians when I can because it saves my old knees from pressure. And based upon my lack of training this year, there are times I may have to actually stop. And it becomes because the streets are so crowded, because this is a very popular event. That actually becomes dangerous for other runners. So there has to be a bailout area also for people. And plus, it's just great to be able to stop and talk to people who are cheering us on, that are in media, and so are holding signs and getting us motivated to keep going. That's what makes it a beautiful event. I'm pretty sure we're not going to get ticketed. But that seems pretty unfair when we're going to get some sort of exception that's not in the ordinance, while they'll go ahead and ticket other people. It's just a basic sense of fairness, that why are they going to select certain people to ticket and certain people not to ticket? So, thank you.
I'm Calvin McCraw. I sell the Curbside Chronicle. I started doing this at first because I was panhandling after I got hurt and couldn't work. The company I was working for did not want to pay workman's comp, and it was a long time before I beat them in court. I'm still having troubles with this hand. It's kind of hard for me to work. I don't want to file for Social Security disability, but it looks like I'm forced to. I was homeless for about 3 years, and I finally, Curbside got me into housing, and this has got me now where I'm not doing as good. I'm gone from selling 30 to 50 magazines a day to 3 to 10 a day. It's not sustainable anymore. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills from day to day. I'm barely eating, and I just think the whole thing's wrong. It's not just me that I'm upset about it either. It's all the other guys out there, people that have mental health issues and just really don't have a place to live and another way to make money. That's really all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
An opportunity for questions.
You said it all.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for covering this event.
Look forward to